I may not always love you.
The United States of America is unraveling for all the world to see.
You can see police here now firing tear gas into the crowd. They are trying to push these folks back.
The nation erupted into scenes of chaos, violence, and widespread destruction into the early morning hours.
God only knows what I'd be without you, without you.
Time travel as we understand it is pretty simple, right? Past, present, future, and the dreaded other. Works of fiction have always played with this idea to tell a story of a time that has passed or depict a future yet unseen. But what would you say if I told you Bioshock Infinite in the year 2020 is more relevant than ever? I'm not going to claim to know everything in this vast universe of gaming critique, but I can't deny how familiar the themes of the 2013 game are with some of the most relevant cultural conflicts in the year of our nightmares, 2020. Now, this game, while older, is still a qualitative marvel and could be discussed in an ungodly amount of ways with an ungodly amount of topics. But one major theme stuck out to me throughout my replay that warranted me revving up the old YouTube engines one more time to show the kids I still got it.
I love the young people.
City of Columbia was originally built as by the United States government in the 1890s as a sort of a floating World's Fair, something they could float from one corner of the earth to the other and demonstrate to the rest of the world the success of the American experiment.
Columbia is a city on fire, which at the center lies two sides, the Colombian forces and the Vox Populi. Ken Levine sat down for an interview during the early stages of production and had this to say.
And it started as a sort of a resistance, almost like a student movement against, the founders, the founders group that Comstock led, as, working to help, to unionize workers, to protect the rights of minorities, things like that within the city. But as the conflict between the founders and the Vox Populi got more extreme, each side started sort of ramping up their actions. The conflict is pretty extreme, and both sides have a bit of an attitude of, well, as long as we win, nothing else matters.
This statement brings me to my thesis, hypothesis, grand sweeping statement that will have no consequences at all. Columbia is the physical manifestation of the political discourse of 2020. Now, let me explain. We are all connected via social media, news outlets, comment sections, etc., right? And especially this year with lockdowns and general isolation from normal life, we are physically separated more than ever before, which in turn makes social media interactions and discussions louder than ever. They are, in some cases, our only time we talk / engage with people outside of our homes. Here's a back-of-the-box quote for you. Playing Bioshock Infinite feels like a YouTube comment section. But this also leads me to two other ideas that will jog along with us. Booker representing the average American, while Elizabeth representing childhood innocence. So let's take all three of these ideas and break it down.
Attention in the count of 5. Count of 4.
No.
3, 2, 1. Attention.
Just stay calm.
5,000 feet. 10,000 feet. 15,000 feet. Hallelujah.
Columbia is a place of absolutes while dealing with issues that are very much gray. Of course, in a very gamified way, Infinite portrays each side at the peak of conflict where nothing matters but defeating the other side. Kind of like me at age 16 playing FIFA. Truly horrific scenes. To the Colombian forces, the Vox are nothing more than anarchists who are characterized many times throughout the game as beasts who need to be tamed, along with some flat-out racist propaganda which rings true to the time frame of 1912. Not the most progressive times, to be sure. I'm going to be completely honest here. When I played this game in 2013, I was but a wee lad in regards to social affairs and racial inequalities. While I understood the racial divide within Colombia, I took it at face value, some world building here and subtle environmental storytelling there. I mean, does this man look like a social issue pundit, or that he has any thoughts at all? But replaying now after the tumultuous year, to say the least, all the details stood out like never before. But on the other side, you have the Colombian forces, who represent those who have in a world of have-nots. Many on this side, you have to imagine, are the sons and daughters of American Civil War veterans, as there is about a 50-year difference between the ending of that conflict and the events of this game. Like Ken Levine mentioned earlier, Colombia was supposed to be a collection and showcase of the American experience and way of life, which the Colombian forces believe they are protecting by fighting the Vox Populi, as American society was in a pre-civil rights era. In both cases, they are hyper-violent fantasies of the other side, while fighting with a win-at-all-costs mentality. This brings me back to my previous statement that Colombia is the physical manifestation of the political discourse in 2020. Not so much in a literal sense, but in a way that media and comment sections portray the quote-unquote other side. We witness people being boiled down to the worst common denominator and wonder why the world feels a little more chaotic now. Everything is cranked up to 11, and this is exactly what the conflict is in Colombia. Playing through extreme circumstances with a man and his terrifying Disney-infused counterpart. And speaking of Booker...
Who's there? Who's there?
Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt!
What do you want?
We had a deal to it! Open this door right now!
This brings us to our next point with Booker is the average American. From the beginning, Booker is shown as a kind of a bad guy, but what would you do if you were tasked with retrieving a girl from a city of magical racists? Booker's backstory aside, if you take the character at face value, it starts to make sense. Booker is a third party to the Society of Colombia. He is from the Sodom below and has no real dog in the fight aside from his mission, a true blank slate to this conflict. In real life, I like to believe that the majority of people are just normal citizens trying their best to live their lives in peace. And Booker fits that bill in a sense because of when he was born. The internet tells me he was about 38 years old. But with that generation, war was a pretty relevant part of life, so what, he's killed a couple hundred people in his lifetime. One of my favorite things about Booker is he isn't just a normal shooty gun guy MC that plagued first-person shooters in the early 2010s. Rather, when the game begins doing the timeline jumping, we see a blank slate Booker be molded into not only members of these respective sides, but in the cases we see, he becomes the linchpin to these groups, being the martyr of the Vox and becoming Comstock for the Colombian forces. Kind of gives you a feeling of, in the multiverse, you are anyone and anything you possibly could be. Or rather, how the Lutece twins put it.
But what is she? Alive or dead?
Why do you ask?
The delicious question is when.
The only difference between past and present
is semantics.
Lives, lived, will live.
Dies, died, will die.
If we could perceive time as it truly was.
What reason would grammar professors have to get out of bed?
And Booker makes himself a more enjoyable main character because he is flawed, and his decisions affect not only him, but those around him. Which of whom is the aforementioned terrifying Disney girl, Elizabeth.
Do you think it's possible to redeem the kind of things that we've done?
Redeem? I don't see much use in that.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No. But I'm afraid of you.
I love Elizabeth, and I would commit a war crime for her if she doesn't do it first herself. She's the girl we are supposed to find and our connecting factor to Colombia, and in a way, an example of American innocence. Now, innocence is typically reserved for childhood and is kind of a lack of knowledge or a purity from reality. Elizabeth, throughout the early stages of the game, is shown to be just a naive kid who doesn't understand the world that she lives in. I'd say Elizabeth has the character of a classic American child who, at the time, has been sheltered from the horrible things happening around them. Elizabeth goes through the transformation from naive girl to trauma-hardened woman, and there's definitely a metaphor somewhere in there. As she is exposed to Columbia and society at large, her purity is all but lost, and the ultimate reveal that she is the heir to the place she's trying to escape from. But just like Booker, she's a third party. Since she was sheltered her whole life, she was never introduced into Colombian society, but her naivety is what makes her a great character in this story. A soft hand in a harsh setting. Even as she goes through so much, she still wants to help everyone. Even if that means dropping bombs on New York City, but that's a different timeline discussion altogether. Finally, Elizabeth's character is the ultimate circle breaker. She's the one who ultimately breaks free from Comstock and Booker's conflict, symbolizing that a new generation can break the habits of the old and move beyond the sins of their father. Literally, by drowning them. So, Bioshock Infinite it's one of my favorite games of all time, and it's always fun to flesh it out. Now, obviously, these are my opinions, but I'd love to hear your crazy Bioshock Infinite theories down in the comments if you so wish. But have a happy December, and see you soon.